I've been riding all morning and it felt that I was in Britain because the motorways were full of traffic, so I had to take the B roads, which were quite bumpy. And then the weather was fluctuating between drizzle and this hot sun that we have right now. So excuse us for the bike that is dirty. But the bike in question is the Triumph Street Twin. It's the new Bonneville, and it's taken quite a long time to develop. And it's not hard to see why, because it has a nice balance between retro styling and new age technology. Now the bike that it replaces also achieved that balance, but this one takes it to a whole new level.
New level? I've got to be kidding, right? The new bike looks smaller and lacks all the shine of its predecessor. But the fact of the matter is, with the new range of Bonnevilles, Triumph has broadened the gap that existed between the base Bonnie and the T100. The bike you see here is more about inviting new customers to the brand than to build upon a heritage. It therefore needs to cater to a wider and a newer audience, and hence it isn't as retro as a purist would expect. In fact, there are plenty of plastic parts to mimic the effect of metal while also minimizing maintenance costs. Even its lean form and low ride height is designed to accommodate riders of most sizes.
Swing a leg, twist the key, and you'll get the first taste of modern engineering for the Bonneville. You get a slight squeak of the fuel pump and a self-check on the minimalist clock. Now you still don't get a rev counter, but now you do get a digital fuel gauge and a gear position indicator.
The handlebar is set fairly low for a slightly lean forward riding stance. The switch gear is also predictive and easy to use too, and the new iSwitch cycles through various modes on the digital panel.
Thumb the starter and you get a lovely exhaust note. Now compared to the earlier Bonnie, which got a 360-degree crank, this one gets a 270-degree crank. It's much like the earlier Bonneville Scrambler, which wasn't sold to us. That gives this the throbbing 90-degree V-twin kind of a sound. Thankfully, it still doesn't sound like a Harley. It's still quite Brit.
The pipes you see here are the louder Vance & Hines option, but the stock canisters are quite grunty as well. Both these exhausts emit a rumble low down the rev range, and it smoothens out into a throbbing note as the revs climb up. The engine is all new and significantly more refined for a British twin, and the vibrations are only felt when it's about to hit the limiter. Its cubic capacity is up from 865cc to 900cc. In a bit to give the bike a more linear and meaty power band, Triumph has dropped the output from 68 PS to 55 PS. Torque, however, has gone up by 12 Newton meters, and most of it is available in a more linear manner from low revs. The result is that the bike can happily cruise at 60 in 5th gear or 40 in 3rd. There is enough low-end torque in fact to get those occasional tail wags when you suddenly open the throttle, but that is also down to the tires.
Even these Pirelli Phantom tires are custom designed to go with the retro theme of this motorcycle. Now these are soft compound tires, so the rubber comes up to heat quite quickly. So on tarmac, the grip is excellent, but on concrete, they do tend to feel a little skittish. And I'm not very happy with the wet weather performance either.
Don't get too worried about hitting your favorite riding routes though. New emission norms have necessitated the inclusion of ride-by-wire technology, and that has also blessed the Bonnie with a new traction control system. It isn't too intrusive, but always alert to keep things in check. The chassis itself is well sorted, and since it is now mated to a stiffer suspension setup, the Street Twin is a sweet handler too. Downside is plenty of jolts to your shoulders when you hit deep potholes or sharp bumps. But then, hitting the twisties or gunning down highways isn't what this motorcycle is made for. It's more about a laid-back ride to work, or slapping your touring luggage and going long distances, or simply just riding to a cafe at the top of a mountain. And that's not all. Look at the Street Twin long enough and you know it's like a blank canvas that lures custom builders. And that's the idea of this motorcycle. Triumph itself offers inspiration kits, customization options and hundreds of accessories. So imagine what will happen when the custom bike builders get their hands on it. But if even this is not your idea of the Bonneville lifestyle, then its elder sibling could appeal more to you.
This is the Bonneville T120. Think of it as an exclusive package for the Bonneville patrons, a comprehensive motorcycle under the skin of a timeless design, and this is my ride for the day. The T120 of today borrows heavily from the T120 of 1969. The silhouette has been deliberately designed to look the same. The tank shape is similar and it is only offered with spoke wheels. One of the most important design features for the Bonnevilles have always been their engines, and this holds true for the T120 as well. With deliberate intent, Triumph has managed to make the engine look no bigger than it was before, despite the increase in capacity. This was so that they could keep the traditional look going, and it does look every bit like a Bonneville should.
Right, so the T120, well, it takes all the lovely attributes of the Street Twin, adds in a bit of capacity, more horsepower, even more technology into the mix, and well, this is the product. So the T120 gets Triumph's new 1200cc parallel twin engine that makes about 80 PS of max power and about 105 Nm of max torque. It is mated with the same 6-speed manual gearbox. Now, just like with the Street Twin's engine, all the focus with the new 1200cc engine is to make everything more tractable and more friendly. So despite the added power, that actually makes this motorcycle even more usable.
Where most motorcycles would cry in protest, the T120 just rides that wave of torque and builds momentum without even a hint of hesitation. There is absolutely no knocking or protest from the engine. It's almost diesel-like, minus the clatter and the noise, of course.
That 105 Nm is made around about the 3000 RPM mark. That's where it's the most comfortable. But anything between 2000 and 4000 RPM is the optimal rev band for this engine. Now, very, very fascinating. You can actually ride this bike in either third or fourth gear without having to change a single gear. You know what else it can do? It can go up a slope in third gear at less than 1000 RPM, and that's incredible. This thing can actually spoil you.
Triumph claims that the T120 with the new 1200cc motor is 13% more efficient than the previous T100 and can do 22.2 km to the litre in the European test cycle.
But for me, the personal highlight of this engine has to be the refinement. Now, by itself, the engine transfers very little vibrations from the foot pegs, from the seat, from the handlebars. In fact, if not for the meaty, throaty exhaust thump, you can barely tell that the engine is running. I think it's safe to say that this is perhaps one of the most refined modern retro classics out there.
When compared to the older Bonnie, the rake angle has been made sharper and the trail and the wheelbase too has been reduced. As a result, the motorcycle has become a lot sharper to ride, much like the Street Twin. The suspension though is set up rather soft. In fact, it is softer than the Street Twin too. This does make it a tiny bit wallowy in the corners, but on the plus side, it does wonders for the ride quality. The ride on the T120 is super plush. On cobblestone roads, over manhole covers, even on our broken stretches of tarmac, you cannot feel a thing. The motorcycle just soaks up everything that's thrown its way.
Apart from the ABS and the single stage traction control that you get on the Street Twin as well, what you get on the T120 is preset riding modes. So you have the road mode and the rain mode, which you can select with this button right here. The rain mode essentially is a full power mode just like the road mode, but it gets a different throttle map. So essentially a gentler throttle response when it's raining. Thing is though, with this motorcycle, you don't really need a gentler throttle response. Now, we've ridden through some torrential downpour and never once have I had to put this into the rain mode. It just doesn't scare you.
The T120's brakes are the same as the Street Twin, 310mm dual discs up front and 255mm singles at the back. And they are set up perfectly to handle the added momentum from the bigger bike too. The bite is progressive and throws in the anchor reassuringly when needed. Another facet then that makes the Bonnie so rider-friendly and confidence-inspiring.
Things I don't like about the T120, well, first of all, it's got too much torque load down, which can get a little troublesome when you're at trolling speeds in the city. Secondly, it's a little heavier to turn in. That's probably down to the fact that it's got an 18-inch wheel in the front and a 17-inch at the back. But these are things that you can get around. What you can't get around is the fact that this engine generates so much heat. Despite being completely liquid cooled, despite being air cooled, if you're at trolling speeds and the engine doesn't get enough cooling, then it can get very hot around your legs. And finally, I think the foot pegs could have been a little higher, because at this height, they do manage to scrape in corners, especially when you're cornering hard.
So the T120 might feel at home on the open motorways and at speeds exceeding 40 kilometers an hour, but if a bulk of your riding happens to be within the city, then the Street Twin will serve you better. But no matter which one you go for, you're sure to get the nod of approval from the classic motorcycle connoisseurs, in addition to the pleasure that comes out of their simplicity and the relief that stems from not visiting the workshop every third day.
If I had to sum up these two motorcycles in one word, it would have to be easy. In fact, I don't think there's any other easier, more approachable, big capacity motorcycle on sale in India. Now, despite the big capacity and all the technology on board, there's nothing that's intimidating about it, except perhaps the pricing. You're looking at 7.21 lakhs for the Street Twin and 9.01 lakhs for the T120, and that of course is ex-showroom. Then of course you add all the stupid taxes that we pay and you're looking at an astronomical sum.
But that said, Triumph is classifying these motorcycles as modern classic, and that sort of justifies the price tag. But if you really look at it, apart from the styling, there's nothing really classic or retro about these motorcycles. The comfort, the technology, the performance, it's all what you would expect from a modern day motorcycle. And I think in that sense, the modern classics, it's not a marketing gimmick, but actually a true evolution of the Bonneville.